Greetings. Welcome to ITR Live. I'm your host, Chris Hagano, and we are back here in Studio 130 for another fun-filled, action-packed episode of the gold standard in Iowa conservative podcast. John Hendrickson, myself here again today. John, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine.
Excellent, excellent. Well, for the listeners out there, we often have a pre-production meeting leading into the episode, and it seems like sometimes when we really don't spend a lot of time in the pre-production meeting, we actually have really good episodes.
Yes,
we actually had a lot to cover in the meeting this morning, and so I'm a little worried that today's episode is going to be a little weak.
Yeah,
but we're going to see if you can rally through it. We do have a lot to go over today, though, and I want to get to it. We're going to talk a little bit about what's going on in Iowa, what folks can expect coming up on property taxes a little bit. John, we're gonna talk a little bit about immigration, and but I think before we get to all of that, I want to take just a minute at the outset to remember my friend Bill Northey, who passed away, I think actually 2 days ago as we record this, but unexpectedly, at least I think for most of us. John, I don't know, did you ever have a chance to meet Bill Northey?
No, I did not get a chance to meet him.
Bill was the Iowa Secretary of Agriculture in Iowa for I want to say 12 years, and then served in the U.S. Department of Ag in the Trump administration for a couple of years. But Bill was simply put, just one of the kindest men I'd ever known, and really just a big loss for the state of Iowa. He loved Iowa. He loved agriculture. He loved talking about it, loved telling people about it, and he is just a good man and a great Iowan, and he will be missed. So I just wanted to say that at the outset, because we're an Iowa podcast and we can't be the gold standard if we don't remember things like that.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, very good.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's, you know what, I'm going to do this in a little bit different order than I thought at the outset, but just a quick update on a couple of things, I think, with regard to Iowa politics that have popped up. Did you see this article that was in the Des Moines Register this morning about the ESA numbers?
Yes. Yeah.
Yep. And so I think we both sort of agreed that it was fairly well done because it was objective.
Yes. Yeah.
And they took the data from the enrollment data from the public schools of where they were drawing the students from, and say what districts are having a shift of students from public to private. Did you have any takeaways on that article, or anything that jumped off the page at you?
No, I mean, one I thought, for all the attention this issue is getting, I did think that the article was fairly balanced in the way it presented the issue, and I think one thing too is I think some of the, I don't want to say the concerns are being overblown, but I do think that some of the governor's objectives are reasonable in terms of trying to streamline some of the resources and make them more flexible for school districts to use.
Well, one of the things, I agree with all that, John, is that it's a little bit like when we did the tax bills, where there's so much doom and gloom that is portrayed when that this is going to be the end. Well, the same thing was said with ESAs. If you think back, that this is going to devastate public schools, and especially in the rural areas. We just heard that over and over. Well, we get here and look at the data, and come to find out that the areas where students are shifting to private schools are more populated areas where there's existing private schools. And so there's actually a lot of the state of Iowa that either had no students shift to private schools, or just ones and twos. So and even the article, kudos to the Des Moines Register for pointing this out. I mean, they say that it was not a seismic shift, and that the trends were modest. And it was just interesting to see those numbers. They've got a nice chart that actually looks kind of like what we do at ITR Foundation with some of these, that you can actually see a lot of the ESA enrollees, which was the case before the bill, are up in the northwest part of the state. I thought it was fascinating. The Boyden-Hull School District, John, has more students in private schools than they do in public schools. which, I mean, in the town of Hull, I think there's about one on every corner, but, home of Western Christian and several other.
I didn't realize that until that article.
Yeah. So, and then you've got, there's just a lot of really good private Christian schools up in the northwest part of the state. So it was interesting. I'd encourage anyone that's interested in the issue to check it out. I guess in my mind, once again, you see that, while we're told at the beginning of a conservative reform by the left that the sky is falling and this is going to devastate, nope. Guess what? It's largely doing what it was scheduled to do. So we talk a lot about the ITR proactive agenda, tax cuts, everything.
Yes.
There's a bill that's floating through the legislature, though, that's actually moving that I want to get your take on, John. I was stunned that they actually scheduled this bill for a subcommittee, but there was a bill to allow cities and counties, allow local governments to establish rent control in the state of Iowa. And that actually cleared subcommittee and has moved on to the full committee now. So in the Iowa House is going to allow rent control programs. Tell folks that might not be as familiar with this issue about rent controls.
Well, it's I was surprised learning this as well, that it's been moving. But basically, what I think the objective is here is to respond to one housing is a big issue, and so I think the other thing is that the idea of rents being too high and allowing more flexibility for local governments. But in a sense, though, I don't think this is the best policy to address that, because it's one I think we can look at other housing markets and other areas that have tried this, and it just
New York City.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it does not bring the costs down.
Okay. Generally speaking, the free market is a pretty good allocator of scarce resources.
Yes, yeah.
Well, if there is a shortage of housing in Iowa, which I think a lot of folks would say that there is. The business community would say that. Iowans may be looking for a home, especially in rural parts of the state, that there might be a shortage of quality housing. I don't know that that's subject to rents, but whatever. But the free market is going to fix that and correct that problem. Artificial price controls, I mean, that's straight out of Marxism.
Yes, yeah.
And so maybe that's over-dramatizing it a little bit, but rent control programs is the opposite of the free market. It's the opposite of free market capitalism, and is going to, you've seen groups like, I believe the Home Builders Association, Manufactured Housing, groups that are in the business of building housing in the state of Iowa are saying, stop, don't do this. Because what it's going to do is increase cost.
Yes. Yeah.
And it reduces the profits. If I want to invest in an apartment building, but I know that county is going to limit the amount of money that I can make on that, I'm not going to invest in it. I'm not going to make the improvements in it.
Yeah. And the other thing, too, is there's a lot of existing government programs that provide, in a sense, rent-controlled apartments. I mean, we see them all around in the metro here. And again,
probably not, by and large, a good idea and a good use of public resources, but I digress.
Yeah. I mean, it's not, the issues aren't similar, but I think of the issue with the governor rejecting the federal aid for the summer food program, and what we see here is once again emotion taking over and saying all these people are going to go hungry, but they forget the existing programs and other private resources that are in place that are meeting that need.
Yeah,
and I think the same goes for this, and it's I wasn't aware, so I don't know how this came about and the backstory to this, but it just was surprising that they would move that bill.
I would suspect that the proponents of the bill, if we asked them, well, it's local control, we should let locals decide.
Yeah.
And yet, once again, this would be an example of local control never being asserted in any other way but to take away individual liberty, individual freedom,
Yeah,
and increase my taxes.
that's right. Yeah.
It's every single time. If I'm wrong, please tell
Yeah.
me. Please,
No, and
please
I-
give me the example where local control has been asserted as part of an effort to get government out of my way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, too, there's a lot of use of TIF for housing as
Yes.
well. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes that I remember I can't remember what community it was, but there was some controversy over TIF being used to build these elaborate houses that were on the edge of a golf course in Iowa, and then of course it was the justification was this was housing that was needed, but I don't know if workforce housing people can afford to live on a golf course.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. There is a shortage of housing at all up and down the spectrum, but the default should be to let the free market answer that, not local government.
Yeah.
Because Anyway,
Well, that's
rent
the-
control policies. We've got example of a country. It doesn't work. It's command economy garbage that we just need to put a stop to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you were going to say. I'm sorry.
Well,
it boggles my mind that we're actually spending time on this issue.
Yeah, and it reminds me too of the, a lot of people focus on the assessment side in terms of property taxes, but they don't realize that when you have something like California's Prop 13, which a lot of people hold up, that really distorts property values, and that also creates problems in terms of our housing price, especially for first-time housing buyers, and so it's again it's a wrong solution for the problem they're trying to address.
I'm glad you kind of brought that up, because I'm going to transition now to my other issue. And maybe this is just your periodic warning here on the issue of property taxes.
Yeah.
Because this has come up. You can hear them sounding the alarm in local government. They've been doing it. The volume is picking up. The woe is us. We don't have enough money.
Mm-hmm.
Here it comes. As these folks have sit down, they're starting to work on their budgets, and they realize they don't get to grow as much as they want to. So John, you brought up, there's an article here. Was this the Gazette?
Yeah, Cedar Rapids Gazette.
Okay, so Cedar Rapids Gazette, city scramble to fill budget gaps. Well, again, let's go back. This is limiting the amount of growth, right? Okay, so they visit with some different local government folks. The headline here, as the city scramble to fill budget gaps, the approximately $5,000 a year the city of Swisher devotes to replacing old Christmas decorations is among the expenses act from the city's upcoming budget. Okay, I mean, I like Christmas lights and all, but I think they've sort of kind of given it away there right at the outset. But they're all of the horrible things that are going to happen because of this dastardly bill that the legislature passed last year to limit the growth in property taxes.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, not to cut,
Mm-hmm.
to limit the growth.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, what jumped off this year? I mean, we can just pick and choose because there's all kinds of local government folks that are complaining in here. But anything that you want to touch on?
Well, I think the thing that stuck out to me was what you already said, and that was and they have different quotes from city officials in that article, but complaining about, well, we can't capture the windfall from the assessments because
windfall
of this.
Being the operative word.
And it always reminds me of anytime, whether we're looking at local, even state or federal government, anytime you attempt to even slow spending, there's someone that says, well, you're actually cutting spending. And so here it's the budget is not being cut. It's just not being able to grow as much as they would like to. And these local governments, as we both know, have been for a long time, decades, been taking advantage of these windfalls from the assessments. And I think that first example about the replacing the Christmas lights, well, there is times where, just like we do in businesses, you have to decide what are the priorities to spend your budget on, and there might be a season where you cannot maybe you have to keep the old Christmas decorations and you can't get new ones. But it comes a point where these local governments have to realize that people are fed up with their property taxes, and there needs to be some property tax relief, and they cannot just keep on continuing to spend like they have been.
The people of this state are demanding relief from the skyrocketing cost of property taxes. The bill last year was a result of local governments not policing themselves.
That's right. Yeah.
They need to look in the mirror. That's what's going on here. And again, we're not cutting. And the reason I want to bring this up is because this feels like here's the blame game starting.
Yes.
Right now, here in the article, they want to start blaming rollback.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, we'd have gotten this huge windfall off the assessment increase if it weren't for the horrible rollback. Well, guess what? The rollback protects you, Iowa taxpayers, by limiting the amount of taxable value. If your assessment goes up, the rollback protects you.
That's right.
And so when they're blaming rollback, what they're really saying is that we wanted to just use that to take even more of your dollars. Property's worth more. Look, if it goes up 20% in value, we want 20% more of that money.
That's correct.
It's just deflecting.
Yeah. And that's one thing I've noticed ever since starting to look into property tax is that it's been a blame game by local governments, and it's whether it's in this case the rollback. A lot of times they're blaming the legislature. In fact, we've seen a lot of in the news lately, a lot of county supervisors blaming the state,
right,
for mandates. And I've asked different supervisors and even legislators, what are the mandates? And I've not yet been able to see a list.
If there were, John, they'd have been addressed already by the legislature.
Yes, yeah.
They absolutely would.
Yeah.
This is, so I want to, here it is. Coralville is saying that, well, worker pay increases are slated to cost more than the property tax revenue gains the city is allowed to keep.
Yeah.
Think about how that's phrased, allowed to keep. And that under the new law, they're allowed to keep about $120,000. It said his staff were working. This is talking about Coralville City Administrator Kelly Hayworth. He said his staff were working to fill a remaining $500,000 gap by making relatively small spending adjustments among city departments. So the doom and gloom is because they have to make relatively small adjustments.
Yeah.
And this comes back to Iowans demand better.
That's right. Yeah.
Why weren't you making the relatively small adjustments before?
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, John, you've been to Coralville recently or driven through.
Yes, yeah.
Seems to me to be the best of times in Coralville.
Yeah.
And, look, this is a community that has a long and storied history with TIF, of pushing that all the way to the limits.
Yeah.
I'm not feeling sorry for anybody
no.
that's trying to run the city of Coralville.
Yeah.
They've got it. They seem to be doing just fine.
Yeah.
So figure it out.
Yeah.
And don't blame the legislature for trying to fix what you couldn't on your own.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. So full circle on the blame game. You're going to see more, Iowans are going to see more articles like this. They're going to see cities and counties, the administrators and whoever else just, it's horrible. These cuts we're going to have. It's the legislature's fault. Don't fall for it. Okay.
Yeah.
And if anything, you need to contact your state legislator and tell them thank you for finally holding their feet to the fire.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there was last night on Channel 8, there was a news story out of the city of Des Moines, very similar to this article, and that was in the Gazette, basically crying foul over this new property tax bill and how it's going to hurt the budget. And again, I think it's important for folks to realize that, this is slowing the growth of spending. It's not a cut. And I hate that term, slowing the growth, but that's what it is. Yeah. And like I said, it's only in government where if you slow something, it's considered a cut.
Absolutely right. Okay, so one more Iowa issue. This is going to sort of pivot us into how we wrap this all up today, John. So Governor Reynolds is sending Highway Patrol, I believe, back down to the southern border in Texas. Is that right?
Yeah, and possibly National Guard.
And possibly National Guard as well. As the debate seems to heat up at the federal level. And as usual, I mean, cue the progressive left on, here they are complaining about, using these resources on the southern border, which, they conveniently ignore all the ways in which the Biden administration is completely abdicating any responsibility to it. And so it's up to the states, but, they don't want to talk about that. But kudos to Governor Reynolds, who is chairing the RGA right now and being, a leading voice along with Governor Abbott of Texas in generating this response at the southern border. So I'm sure you agree with me.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think our listeners are keenly aware of the Hendrickson philosophy on immigration. Yeah. And if we talk about it too much, guys, it's because this is how I get John to be the repeat on the podcast, is we have to promise him that he gets to talk about immigration every once in a while.
And trade,
yeah. Which actually, I'm surprised you haven't been on me more about that lately to get back on trade. But so I want to, you agree with this? This is a good move for Governor Reynolds?
Oh, absolutely. And I think because it's clear that the federal government is not doing what it should be doing.
Right.
And securing the border. And it is a, with that word crisis is used a lot in politics, but this truly is a crisis. And the idea that, there was someone on Channel 8 the other day basically criticizing the governor, saying this isn't a crisis and Iowa has no responsibility doing this. But, illegal immigration does impact other states, even if they're not on the border. Mm-hmm. And whether it's drugs, illegal labor from that. And so there's all kinds of factors and it has a huge financial cost on taxpayers as well. Yeah. And so there's a whole host of things we could talk about. But I think she's doing the right thing.
What got me going, and I want to talk a little bit about this debate that's in Congress right now about this bill that's floating through that. I know you've looked at it, John. So there is it feels pretty swampy, right? This sort of bill that they've concocted with 30 different things in it. And I think you were telling me there's Ukraine funding in it.
It's awful.
But we got to pass this, right? What galls me about this is you've had some Republican senators, members of, Speaker of the House has said, we're not running it. Mm-hmm. But kudos to Chuck Grassley, who said, I think that is only going to benefit Biden in his reelect. Why are we running it?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, you should have heard it from the left that why would you play politics with this issue?
Yeah. And Senator Grassley, absolutely right, because all this is the Democrats have seen the writing on the wall. The American people are fed up. They want something done with immigration, and this is a phony bill. Well, it's a 400-page disaster that would actually make the situation worse. And also, as you said, there's a little over $60 billion for Ukraine, and there's only $20 billion in it for the border.
Well, I don't like that there's Ukraine money in there, but set that aside for a minute, because there are people that think that we should keep funding Ukraine. I disagree, but okay, set that aside. President Biden does not need this bill to address the crisis at the border.
That's absolutely
Keep in mind that his administration is the one that's taking the case to the Supreme Court to cut down razor wire. Mm-hmm. President Biden has the full power and authority of the United States government at his disposal to go down there on the border and fix it. And nobody's telling him no. Governor Abbott, I'm sure, would love to have him come down there with force and do his job.
Yeah.
But he won't. But he's somehow trying to stand back and say, well, I can't do it unless you pass this bill for me. Yeah. Give me a break. If anybody is playing politics with this issue, it is President Biden for trying to play this game that he needs this piece of junk bill that's loaded with pork barrel spending, money for other causes, and a bunch of other catch and release crap in it. And the only way he's going to be able to do his job, which he has ignored for 3 years, is by passing this bill. This is the ultimate swamp bill.
Yeah.
That this is what drives the American people nuts. And this is what causes them to lose faith in Washington, D.C. There's no transparency here. They're being sold a bill of goods. Yeah. And it's just a game.
Yeah.
And you've got senators on both sides of the aisle that are more than willing to play along with it if they get their piece of crap in it.
Yeah.
And it's infuriating.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's smoke and mirrors, and I was reading the Heritage analysis from the Heritage Foundation. I'll just read one line from their analysis, which should scare everyone. And it says the Senate bill codifies President Biden and DHS Secretary Mayorkas' open border tools and statutes. So basically what they're doing is legalizing everything that they're doing wrong in this bill. And so we don't have time to go through it bullet by bullet, but it's just awful. And it's all it is a gimmick. It's an election gimmick.
Are we really to be led? I think you're exactly right. Are we led to believe that suddenly, after 3 years into the Biden administration, they've seen the light? You know what? We really should do something on the border. We got it wrong. We need some new tools so that we can go do it. Heck no. That is not what's going on here. They want cover.
Yeah.
That is all this is. They want cover because they know this is perhaps their biggest Achilles heel going, well, that besides the president himself and his faculties.
Yeah.
But that this is going to hurt them in the election.
Absolutely.
So now they're going to seek cover.
Yeah.
And it's a bad thing for a Republican senator to say, stop. I don't want to play this game.
Mm-hmm.
But that's his fault for pointing it out.
Yeah.
Look, the whole system is rigged, and the sooner that the American people start collectively seeing through this, the better off we're all going to be.
There was a great article in the American Conservative this morning, and they had interviewed different people on this Senate bill, and they had one quote from Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky, and he says, referring to the Senate bill, and I quote, "From the squandering of your money to the fake border reforms, it's safe to declare this bill as anti-American. I'm a no." Yeah.
Right. As you know, John, I'm a big fan of Rand Paul.
Yeah.
I think he has not only does he have a unique take on some of these things, but he speaks very clearly, and has just really is good at pointing out these problems. I saw some other really good messaging from Mike Lee, Senator Mike Lee out of Utah.
And he has a great, you shared with him yesterday afternoon his two-pager on breaking that down.
It's just kudos to those members of Congress that are being helpful in seeing what's really going on.
Yeah. I think one sad thing, too, is this is a quote from Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio. And he says, throughout this process, the Republican establishment has been more focused on securing tens of billions in aid for Ukraine than on reducing illegal immigration. Their foreign policy goals have clouded this entire debate. And because of that, the border bill is a total disaster that no Republican should support. And that just bothers me because it just, we can have a debate on Ukraine aid but put that as a separate bill. And it just seems like they're trying to move this only for that $60 billion to go. Which
I can't help myself, John. It's good money after bad.
Yes, yeah.
Because that war is not going the way the military-industrial complex wants it to go, other than it's dragging out.
Yeah,
which is what they really want. So,
and it's sad that we have such a disaster on the border that no one's doing anything about it.
The only thing that $60 billion is going to do is prolong that war.
Yeah.
It will do nothing to bring it to an end.
Yeah.
And that is sad.
Yeah.
That is $60 billion to continue the carnage.
Yeah.
So how about we get some people that actually get on about the business of figuring out how we resolve this conflict?
That's
if the United States of America feels the need to be in this conflict, then set about the business of resolving it.
Yeah. It's just, thank goodness you have people like Governor Reynolds and Abbott and these other governors that are, I saw Governor DeSantis is going to send Florida National Guard and so there's all kinds of Republican governors saying, look, we need to do something because the federal government is not doing their job. And the states are rising up to hopefully prevent, this disaster from getting any worse.
Well, John, there's a whole lot more we can say about this.
Yeah.
I think one thing, we were having a conversation yesterday about what can we do to, what are the listeners of the ITR Live podcast? What are they looking for? What do they need from us?
Yeah.
And what keeps them coming? What brings new people in? And if we can help people see through some of this, then I think we will have met some of those goals, and hopefully we've done some of that today. So, but that having been said, I think we've probably about hit the time limit for today.
Yeah.
I'm getting fired up enough. I may actually end up saying something I probably shouldn't. but
Yeah.
we're not quite, well, at least,
No.
anyway, we're okay. But we are going to have a lot more to say about bills moving through the legislature, about upcoming property tax conversations, which are happening at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot that you need to pay attention into, not to mention them trying to pull another fast one over on the American people in the United States Congress.
Yeah.
There's a lot that we need folks to be paying attention
That's right.
to. So anyway, well, with that all having been said, thanks for joining us. John, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
And don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to tell your friends. Don't forget to be on YouTube. You know, we are videoing this. I know you all want to see us. If you think I get fired up just on audio, John can vouch for, I have a lot of I talk with my hands, and we're all over the place here. So you got to get on the YouTube as well. So thanks for joining us. And with all of that, we will see you next time on ITR Live.